Right now, we have our guests, Republican strategist Matt Klink and Democratic strategist Jonathan Harris, who've been standing by. And I just wanted to get your first thoughts. Jonathan, I'll start with you again in terms of the mood inside of the room and the hope that, as Dana White, I'll mention him again, the UFC president said, we should all want the U.S. president to succeed.
I don't know. I would love to play along with that, but it's hard for me to act as though I can ignore the nonsense of what was being said in that rally. Like, American decline is not accurate, and it would be if the sense was I want to unify the country, then what I would have wanted to see was him to come on stage and thank President Biden for working to get the ceasefire and the hostages released since May. Come on and thank President Biden for making it so that TikTok wasn't banned, because the only reason TikTok was not banned is because when President Biden started, he undid Trump's executive order, and he just said a few days ago that he would not enforce the ban. That's the only reason TikTok isn't banned. There was all this nonsense about, but that's not what he did. He didn't go into the rally and say, thank you, President Biden, for these 17 million jobs and getting this country stabilized after COVID and after that rocky start that you got. That would indicate to me that we're trying to come together and that we're trying to do what's best. But what I got the sense of from that rally was not that there's a desire to come together. There's a desire to rewrite history, and to rewrite history as though Donald Trump didn't do the terrible things that he did when he was president that destabilized the country and divided it socially and led to the Black Lives Matter movement and all that, but to rewrite it and say that right now he's being elected because he did such a terrific job and that things are just so bad right now. So it was just a little disturbing, because every time Donald Trump has an opportunity to rise to the occasion and actually bring the country together, acknowledge the things that he's done wrong, he doesn't. He blames someone else, and he tries to say that he's a victim and that he's going to take care of a problem, when in many instances, like with TikTok, the only reason the TikTok ban conversation is coming up is because he started it in his administration. But there's no mention of that either. So it was disappointing. Once again, he had an opportunity, and once again, he didn't rise to it. But I know that all the people there at the rally want to, they want to rewrite history. They want to make it a party like half of the country was not passionately against him becoming president.
Matt, I want to ask you about these executive orders, the record number. We just had a report filed by our Joe Khalil saying how many will be signed tomorrow, day one of his presidency. I guess there was a moment in his conversations with his administration or his cabinet where someone suggested that he take weeks to sign these orders, to dole them out, so to speak. And he said, like hell, we're going to do that. We're going to get them all signed on day one. Do you believe that this is a part of the Trump legacy to come in and be the wrecking ball that so many are anticipating he'll be?
I think that absolutely is what his supporters expect, Adrian. I think that he wants to come in and he wants to figuratively and literally draw a line in the sand and say that 4 years of Joe Biden is done. We're now on 4 years of Donald Trump. And quickly to address what Jonathan said, I think that tonight was really more of a campaign rally for Trump supporters. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow, if with Presidents Clinton, Obama, Biden, and Bush in the audience, I wouldn't be surprised if he says something more positive about Joe Biden. Although I must tell you, it's never been reciprocated by Joe Biden. So that being said, tonight was the night to rally the troops. It's the night to remind these troops of why he was resoundingly elected by a majority of the voters and a crushing win in the Electoral College. And he accomplished exactly that. Tomorrow, I think, will be a much different speech. It will not be a campaign rally type speech. And he will try to set the tone to move the country forward for the next 4 years.
Jonathan, I have to ask you, in terms of setting tone, as Matt alluded to there, and we remember the Carter funeral and President Obama sitting beside President Trump, and the two seeming to be laughing, seeming to have camaraderie. I mean, these two men have been ruthless with one another, and yet it seemed as though in that moment, all was forgiven and second chances were allowed. And there was even some criticism of President Obama for smiling and laughing with the incoming president. Do you think that message is being, you were one of them?
I was one of those, yeah.
Why?
Well, I mean, because look, here's the thing. I lived in Washington, D.C., working in political media for 3 years. Most of my friends in D.C. are all Republicans. We don't agree on anything. That's the joke, actually, is that we get along so well and we don't agree on anything. I used to do panels with the guests, and then we would go get a drink afterwards. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with being able to get along with people with whom you don't agree politically. That's fine. That's actually the only way a country can work that's this size. You can't have 150 million people or whatever, 75 million people versus 175 million people. A divided house can't stand. But when you're there appearing to yuck it up with a man who has attacked your wife. I mean, Michelle Obama talked about not only him trying to make people fear the first black president and his family, but the horribly racist things that he said, calling him a Muslim. He's not even, not that being a Muslim is bad, but that he's an Islamic, like he's Islamic terrorist, and that he's not really from this country, and all of the horrible things that he said about him, and the horrible things that he said about President Biden. And then President Biden, I mean, the idea of saying that it wasn't reciprocated is ridiculous. President Biden welcomed Donald Trump into the White House to sit down and have a meeting with him on camera because President Biden values that tradition. But I think that there is something to be said for, Donald Trump talking about calling all these communities the names he's called them, taking women's autonomy over their bodies away, and saying that different states should be able to decide on fundamental rights for women. Well, when you're like yucking it up and smiling and things like that with that person, we don't know what they were talking about, but it's distasteful. It doesn't look right. And I think Vice President Kamala Harris set the right tone. She was there, but she wasn't laughing it up with President Obama. I mean, with with Donald Trump. She was there. She did what she had to do, but she wasn't there hugging him. I think Mike Pence's wife also ignored Donald Trump, and that was the appropriate tone to set, because at a certain point, I'll just say in conclusion, you do have to stand for your values. And Donald Trump's values have been attacking people, the insurrection, the terrorist attack on January 6th, calling those people who engaged in that hostages. Okay. I mean, what are your morals if you don't stand for anything? So, yeah, I was critical.
Let me get to Matt before, because we're out of time now, but let me just allow Matt to have the final word. And I appreciate both of you always. I just have to make sure that we stay on time. Matt, just final thoughts. Obviously, there are a lot of people in this country who don't agree with Jonathan, which, Jonathan, thank you for reflecting on the fact that you have friendships with people with whom you don't agree with. But there are a lot of people in this country who are celebrating, who are, excited about this shift in the country and about this change, and have actually switched teams. Maybe were Democrats like President Trump was, like Elon Musk was, and I could keep going. In terms of looking forward, what is the best thing, what is the most American thing that we can do, whether we voted for him or not in these coming days?
Yeah, Adrian, I think the most important thing, and look, Jonathan, clearly you're very passionate about this, but it's important to remember that your opponent does not have to be your enemy. And I will remind your listeners that some pretty nasty stuff was said about Donald Trump as well. It's politics. And guess what? They put on their big boy pants, they fight it out, and the election's over. And in this time, Donald Trump won. When Barack Obama won his 2 elections, I'm sure there were people that were disappointed. Opponents, not enemies. And I think that the more that we can have votes like we had in Congress with the Lake and Riley Act, when 10 Democrats crossed party line to vote with Republicans to be able to deport illegal immigrant criminals, that sends a positive message that the government works and stuff can get done. It's not always going to be that way. We still will team up when we need to and when we have to. But again, they are my opponents. They are not my enemies. And Jonathan, I don't agree with your opinion, but I respect the right for you to have it.
And I think that both of you
and likewise
have been very respectful, and we appreciate that. Thank you, gentlemen, for sticking around. This is a 3-hour show, and you guys have been there from the beginning, just waiting in the wings. So we appreciate both of you joining us, and God bless America. God bless you both. Thank you.